सतनाम श्री वाहिगुरु साहिब जी। गोबिंदे मुकंदे उदारे अपारे, हरियं करियं निर्नामे अकामे। गोबिंदे मुकंदे उदारे अपारे, हरियं करियं निर्नामे अकामे। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। In today's class, Maharaj is going to describe then how the illusion of the Brahm appears. So there are going to be, this is going to be explained in numerous analogies here. So first, Guru says that look at the analogy of the clouds. So when the clouds are clear, due to the reflection, they appear blue. And when they are filled with water, they appear dark or gray. It means they do not have their own specific color. Whatever is close by clouds, they appear to be of that color. Sometimes they take forms of looking like mountain, but actually they are not mountain. It's the clouds, but sometimes they appear like mountains. Another analogy of explaining how the Brahma looks different. The other analogy is if you look at a very dry tree in darkness, so this is something we can all do. If you look at a dry tree in darkness, it appears as if there is a person standing there. But if you go like nearby, you'll see actually it is just a dry tree. Another analogy, if you put your feet on a soft rope in darkness, it will feel like that you have stepped on a snake. But actually it's just a rope, right? And if you go have a feel of it, or when there is light there, you'll know it was actually just a rope. That's how the Brahma appears like to be as an illusion. So this is to understand that the things are actually not present, but it was in the mind. The rope that you thought in the mind is a snake is actually just a rope. So how to further analogy Maharaj gives? Like a white diamond. When there is a light falling on the diamond, obviously it sparkles. And if there is a piece of glass somewhere on the road, and if someone looks at it from distance, it causes the same reflection like a diamond. So someone looking at that reflection of light from the glass, they might think that it's a diamond. But when they get closer to it, then we notice it's a glass actually. It's not a diamond. Actually, there was no diamond at all. It was glass all together, all alone. But because from distance, it looked like because of the light's reflection, it looked like there was diamond there. If we look at burning coal from a distance, they might appear as like red rubies. But when we go close by, we see them, we find out it was actually burning coal. Another analogy, of sand and sun. So if you have noticed, when the rays of the sun shine on the sand, they sparkle. And it appears like water from distance. How perception works is, if you're standing really further back from a tree and you point your finger as you're standing there and you're pointing your finger towards that tree and you ask someone, what do you see? Based on that point of the finger, they'll say, I am looking at a tree. But if you go closer to the tree and you keep pointing towards that tree again, and you ask the person again, what do you see? They'll see, I'm looking at a leaf or a branch or a bird, whatever is sitting at the tree. So what changed? It was just the perception that changed. The distance changed, which led to the change of perception. So looking at sansar from distance as sansar roop, then it is sansar. But when looking at close by as Brahm, then it is all Brahm. The Jad Vastu and the Chetan Vastu both have Brahm when looked from close by. And by close by means to eradicate to dispel the agyanta in the mind. And how does that happen? With Gurmat, with the Gyan. And to see the things for as it actually is, to see the Brahm as how Brahm is. So some think of Brahm as to be far away, some say close. That's why there are always different description of Brahm. Some say God is far away, Brahm is very far away, or you have to be somewhere. And then some say that it's very close by. So these are two types of perception. Until and unless the one observing, the one getting observed, and the observation doesn't become one, until this stage, the real Gyan doesn't happen. When all these three become one, then the Anubhav Prakash happens, the practical Gyan happens. Maharaj explains through another analogy of the binoculars. So as we know that there are different lenses of the binoculars, um, one, you can see the further things, objects close by, and with the different type of lens or concave, or I forgot the word, but different type of lens, you can see the closer by objects further away. Same way when one does bhakti, they start seeing Paramatma to be close by. But it's not like the Paramatma has come close by. It was always there. It's not near nor far. So another analogy. Now Maharaj, in the Pandavas, what they did was they made a glass container and they were living in it. Now, as the nature of the glass is to reflect whatever the object is nearby, because this container was made on the land, on the surface of the earth, the reflection of the land was coming on that glass container. And what it made it look like was as if there was actually a house made, but it was just a glass container. So again, this is an analogy to understand how the perception works. To perceive what is actually wrong as the right thing, and to perceive what is actually right as the wrong. This perception is called Maya. The Maya, what Maya does is what is right, it makes it perceive as wrong. And what is wrong, it makes it perceive as right. Now, Maharaj, it is known that there are 8 stages, the steps of Brahma Gyan Avastha. This is the practical Avastha. Up until the 4th stage, one can always fall back down, which is the observer state. One can always fall back from here. Until and unless the person doesn't win over the calm, he's not able to go beyond the 4th stage. And calm is not just the sexual desire, it's the desire of everything. Until and unless person doesn't win over this, he's unable to go beyond the 4th stage. Now, a Mahapurukha once said that what is Brahma Gyan actually? Is really like reading about the Brahma Gyan itself? Because one can read thousands of books and still not be able to experience it. Therefore, it has to be experienced. But in order to experience, one has to read about Brahma Gyan first. And then they have to apply what they're reading. So whatever we are reading in the class, this has to be applied. Otherwise, it's to a point pointless, because we are just reading about it, adding to the ego, and not actually having the experience of it. Now, it is also said that there are 2 greatest obstacles when it comes to Brahm Gyan. One is the material wealth, which is all the material things around us, houses, cars, everything. And one is an extremely beautiful woman, which is like the power of the aurat, the Nari Shakti. So oftentimes we want to hold a position of status in the world so we can have extreme wealth. But if a woman comes in life, then oftentimes a man will pick that woman over any of the material wealth. This is how Maya plays. Woman is considered like to be a magnet, and if a man is metal, then he will ultimately get pulled towards the woman. That's why Mahapurushas give upadesh that become like a soil. Obviously, the magnet cannot pull the soil. This means to be dead inside, means to become so still in a Atma and to lose one's own presence, own separate identity. If a person is still in that Atma Avastha, then no matter what happens, nobody can move that person. This is to go beyond that fourth stage to the fifth stage of Brahma Gyan. And if with the Maharaj Kripa, if one reaches the fifth stage, then he keeps on climbing the ladder towards the other stages. So this is the explanation given by Mahapurush. Guru further explains through another analogy. Imagine there are like people sitting in a boat in a river. And when the boat moves forward, then it is perceived as if the trees are moving. But actually, it's the boat that's moving. Another analogy is if the clouds cover the full moon, and if you keep staring at that for a very long time, then it will appear as if the moon is moving and not the clouds. But in reality, it is the cloud that is moving, not the moon. This appears to be because of the Shakti of Maya as well. Now, we all have seen probably the magician doing that classic trick of pulling the live pigeon from his hat. Now, in the same way, the Brahm is hidden in the Jagat, in the Sansar. But at the same time, it's not hidden as well. Like how a magician performs the trick, he takes the live pigeon out of the hat, and to that person, the person who's actually looking at the magic, there was no pigeon in there. Because the magician actually shows the person first that can you see a pigeon in there? But obviously the magician knows there is a pigeon inside. He knows the truth. Same way, those who starts to know the Brahm, they start getting closer and closer to the Brahm. He starts knowing that the Brahm is close by. But those who chase the Maya, the material wealth, they're always occupying their brain with those things. They will always say that there is no such thing as Brahma, or God, or Atma, or Paramatma. So in this way, this khed is happening. The magic is happening right in front of us, but we are not able to perceive it. And those who know the truth fully, there is no magic to them because all they see is the truth itself. Sikh says to Maharaj, Maharaj, I have understood this well now, that the Brahm is conscious rule and the Jagat is not going to stay forever. So I have accepted it as to be the Jad Vastu. Maharaj, explain me how did the consciousness took the form of the world as Jad Vastu? How did that come into being? So Guru explains that only the consciousness can form the non-conscious, the Jad Vastu. And how is that? By understanding the example of a carpenter. Like how a carpenter, he can make different puppets or statues from the wood. Now the wood is a Jad Vastu. And what is the Jad Vastu? As we have already understood, Jad Vastu is that doesn't move on its own. It will stay still from it at one place. And so the statues and the puppets that are formed from the wood, they're not able to move on its own. But who made them? It is the carpenter. Carpenter here is the consciousness. Only the consciousness can create a Jad Vastu. But then the consciousness can appear from the Jad Vastu as well. And how is that? We have seen termites that are formed in the wood. These termites actually appear from the wood itself and they survive on that wood only. There they multiply. In the same way, the conscious being, a Jad Vastu is formed from there, and from the Jad Vastu, a conscious being is formed again. Guru says to Sikh that observe this analogy very carefully here to understand that how the conscious being creates the Jad Vastu, and from that Jad Vastu again another consciousness being is formed. When you will understand this completely, then your doubt will be removed. And what is the biggest doubt? The biggest doubt anyone ever has is that they are taking birth and they will die. And if this doubt is removed, the cycle of birth and death will end. And you will always be in that anand, the bliss or the never ending state while living in this body as well. Maharaj says, how about let's look at our own body now? This body is known as a conscious being because we see activities happening in it. But the nails that are grown in the body, there is no movement in the nails. Even though they have grown out of the same body, we trim them as well because they are jada vastu, they do not move. How did they grow from the conscious being? This is how this has been formed. Another example is if you look at a cow dung. Now, the cow dung is a jad vastu, it doesn't move around. But when it stays for a few days, then you will start noticing insects starting to appear in them. How do they appear? This is to understand how the conscious being is formed from jad vastu as well. This is another analogy to understand fully. Sikh says to Maharaj, Maharaj, I have understood that a jad vastu can be formed from a conscious one. And from the conscious being, a jad vastu is formed as well. Maharaj, I have understood that the Brahm is the cause of the formation of this world. Now, this was called the Upadan Karan. There are two types of causes. One is Upadan Karan, the substantive cause, and one is the Nimitt Karan, the instrumental cause. We're going to understand them a little bit further. So, Sikh asked Maharaj, Maharaj, please explain me about the Nimitt Karan now, the instrumental cause. Guru says that if I start explaining about the Vedas, then this Granth is going to be really massive. That's why I'm explaining you through my personal experience so that we can understand it easily. That's why Maharaj in Gurbani as well say that even the Veds cannot explain the praises of Brahmagyani. Because what is explained in the Vedas it's so much in depth and it's going to take such a like thousands, sometimes even hundreds, thousands of years as well. But what Mahapurukhs do is they have already got that wisdom and they explain to us in a very shorter period of time. They literally explain the whole concept of Ved through a simple analogy. That's why we should do Sangat of these Mahapurukhs. If we try to read the Vedas by ourselves, it's going to take us so many years to even read about it, let alone understand. But if we sit near a Mahapurukh, what's going to happen? You ask them a question, they're going to answer it within few minutes. All that wisdom that's going to take years to be understood or to read about, they're going to explain in few minutes only. This is the benefit of having Sangat of Mahapurukhs. Hanji. Next, Maharaj explains, giving an analogy, like how there are two causes known for it's an example of a clay pot. One is the clay itself. So, how to understand the Upadan cause? So, the clay is the Upadan cause. But let's say the clay was just sitting there. Can it do anything on its own? Can it transform itself into a clay pot without the potter. The clay needs the potter for it to be transformed into the clay pot. And what the potter does it, he pours water into it, he puts it into that instrument, gives it into that shape, puts it into the sunlight, and then eventually the clay takes the form of the clay pot. Here, that clay is the upadan cause, and the nimitt cause is the potter. The potter is the instrument. In the same way, the world is formed from 5 elements. And when these 5 elements further collaborate with each other, then they form into 25 of those. And then there are 3 qualities of Sato, Rajo, Tamo. As we have previously discussed these qualities, and when these 5 elements and the 3 qualities they come together, the world is formed. This is the Upadan Karan, the Upadan cause. And the Nimitt cause is the Brahm, the instrumental cause. The Brahm itself is the Jeev, the Brahm itself is the Ishwar, and the Brahm itself is the doer. And as we previously discussed as well, who is an Ishwar? And the 3 Ishwar, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Now there are many, there is not just one Brahma, one Mahesh or Vishnu. Every universe has its own Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and every body has its own as well. And in that physical body, in every cell, there is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Now, just for a second, if you try to do the vichar of this, you can just even think about it, that how many Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh are there. That's why Gurbani says that there are anek. The one who operates the Ishwar is Brahm, the one who operates the Jeev is Brahm as well. It itself, Brahm is Ishwar and Jeev too. Maharaj says, let's contemplate this very well here, that a potter is required to form a clay pot from the clay. It cannot form it on its own. The potter is required who moves the clay, pours water into it. There is the whole process about it. He puts it into the sunlight, he dries it. So Guru says, how can this be explained in more detail? That in simple words, Brahm itself is the clay, it itself is the water, it itself is the sunlight, it itself is the clay. The clay pot that is formed is Brahm itself. And the potter is Brahm as well. That's why Sab Gobind hai, Gobind bin nahi koi. In Gurbani as well, Maharaj says about Jale Hari, Hale Hari, and then he eventually goes on saying Tu hi, tu hi, tu hi, tu hi. Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj says Tu hi for about 16,000 times, but it's written for 16 times, and it is said that those who do the job of Tu hi, even for 16 times, it is equivalent to 16,000 times. And why Maharaj says Tu hi so many times, and then he first starts by saying Jale Hari, Hale Hari, and then he goes Tu hi. We will discuss this later on as well. Now, Guru is going to do Kirpa, and Guru says, let me explain this even in a more simplified way through another analogy. See, Guru is so beyond, he's giving us the simplest to simplest analogies to explain. Guru says, look at the spider. Now, when the spider forms a web, now where does that web come from? It's not like he's borrowing from the neighbor or something. It obviously is coming from his own body. The subtle body of the spider forms the web, and with the physical body, the spider formed the web. So the subtle body is giving that web itself. And the physical body of the spider is setting up the whole web. In that same web, a insect or a prey, it's the spider's prey will get trapped, and by eating its prey, sometimes the spider dies in its own web itself. In the same way, Brahm is doing everything, and it is everywhere. In somewhere, in some aspect, he is taking birth and dying as a jeev. In some aspect, he is sitting as an agyani, and in another aspect, he is a gyani. Somewhere Brahm is as a Raja, somewhere he is a beggar. Somewhere he speaks about the Ved, and somewhere he speaks against the Ved. Somewhere he praises about the Brahm, somewhere he is doing Nindya of it. Now, with this Gyan, Maharaj, if we all do after this class, if we read the Akal Ustat Bani of Maharaj, by understanding this Gyan, and see how much Ananda you will get, that how the Brahma actually does everything. It is all explained in Akal Ustat Bani. Hanji. So Maharaj explains that the cause and the doer of the cause is Brahma itself. The truth is the Brahma itself is the doer, and that which is being done is Brahma itself. Yet the cause and the doer is separate. Somewhere it speaks about unity, and in another point of view, it speaks about separation. Now, we often say that if we do sin, the Brahm will get angry with us, or if I do good deeds, the Brahm is going to be very happy with us. As long as there is duality in a person, he will say these things that Brahm is happy with me or Brahm is sad with me. If I do this, Brahm is going to get upset with me. But what does a Brahmgyani tells how Brahm is? Brahmgyani says that Brahm has no rupa, no rek, no form, nothing. There is Pankti in Gurbani Maharaj says, Rupa na rek na rang kich treh gunate prabh pen. It has no form, no color, and it is beyond the three gun, the three qualities as well. It is beyond the emotions as well. Now, if someone who doesn't have Gyan, who is not a Brahmgyani, he will cry, he will laugh and play all as well. This is to explain that there are two ways of living. One is in a Gyan way, and one is in a Gyanta. And now, which one is the right and the wrong? Both are right in their own avastha. And why is that? Because the Agyani is Rupa Brahm as well. In whatever way he speaks of Brahm, even that is correct in one way. And the way a Brahmgyani explains Brahm, even that is correct. Only the Brahm or the Guru knows what the Brahm is like. Only the Guru, the actual enlightened beings, knows what the Brahm is like. The rest are just trying to have an understanding of it. Guru explains that when a clay is formed, we call it with that name. But the cause of the form is the clay. Now we know that. And what is the avastha of a Gyani? What does a Gyani do? When the clay pot is formed, from the clay, he calls that as a clay pot. He gives that a name. When a parent is teaching their child, they will say this is a clay pot. And when the child repeats the same thing, then the parents praise the child that you have done you have understood it well, you know that this is a clay pot and not clay. So this is considered to be the knowledge. But the clay is the cause, because without the clay there will not be any pot. And if someone has gyan and you ask them that is it a clay or a clay pot, then he will say it is clay. He will see the cause. He will know that the cause is itself. So he won't label those things. The Gyani knows that how the clay is the cause of that clay pot. Same way, the Brahm is the cause of the world. And that's how the Gyani remains in Anand. Because if someone else looks at a clay pot, he will say and see it as a clay pot. And when he looks at another thing, he will call it by that name. There are so many different objects in the world. When an Agyani looks at that, he will have all these mental images in his mind with different, so many labels in it. And what happens when we label these different images? It produces different thoughts. There are different emotions that are formed. And some thoughts are of liking and some are of hatred. You see an object, either there is a thought of you like that thing or you dislike that thing. There is love for one thing and then there is dislike for another. But when a Brahmajnani is looking at, he is seeing Brahm everywhere. He holds no love, no hatred for anything. He has no attachment to anything. He's beyond any of the emotions. Because the emotions can only happen at the level of mind. And that's how he's always in the Ananda Avastha. As long as we don't see the real cause of whatever is happening, we do not experience bliss. That's because there are so many thoughts happening in the mind. We don't see our real Sarup as Atma due to all these different thoughts of mind. And when the mind becomes still, the Atma Gyan happens. If we see all the things as different, then the same amount of thoughts will appear, and all these problems stem from these thoughts. All the mental disorders, depression, anxiety, stress, all these are the leading cause of the mental disorder, which are coming from the thoughts. Because we know these mental disorders are not a physical thing, they stem from the thoughts. Now, in Ayurveda as well, it is explained that the cause of the overthinking is the increased Vata. So, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. This is how the body is made. There are three doshas: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. The imbalance of these dosh or doshas creates disease at a physical level and at a mental level. And when there is increased Vata, Vata I think is a combination of air or space element. Definitely space element is there. So when it is increased, it causes overthinking. And that's why in yoga, it is encouraged to do the exercises of like the breathing exercise so one can balance the air. And what happens when they balance, they bring that air into balance state, the thoughts are reduced. And when the thoughts are reduced, then slowly one reaches the state of Sona Samadhi. And Suna Samadhi is where there is no thought, absolute thought. There is state of stillness, or call it thoughtless state. And there you realize I'm neither the body, I'm not the breath as well, I'm not the mind, I'm not the buddhi, I'm not the chitta as well, I'm neither of any of the senses. I am the Atma, I am this consciousness who actually runs this mind or the buddhi. The mind, buddhi, everything is functioning because of me. Now, as previously discussed, why did Maharaj in Gurbani says Jale Hari, Thale Hari, and then he eventually says Tu Hi, Tu Hi, Tu Hi, Tu Hi. This is to make us understand that how you see water as water, earth as earth, we label these things. But Maharaj says, I'm telling you very clearly here that there is no separate things in the world. It is just one thing. Tu Hi, Tu Hi. All that is you. Here Maharaj removes all the labels clearly. And he does the job of Tu Hi, Tu Hi. There is doubt in our understanding. When we see an object, we call it with that name. We look at a person, we call with that name. We look at a different animal, a different person, an image is formed in the mind, and we call them, we understand, we see them with through those labels. Until and unless we don't say tu hi in everything, everywhere, everything, we cannot see the tu hi in ourselves as well. If we can see tu hi in everything, then you will see the tu hi in yourself as well. And when we leave the sansar, means to do tyag of sansar from the intellect, from the buddhi. When we leave the world from the intellect with the gyan, and when we see it as only Brahm, now it is important to understand that it doesn't mean when we talk to the in the world normally we don't call out with the names because that is gonna sound very crazy. Obviously, we're gonna have to use the names. We're gonna call each other with the name that's there. But as long as we are living in the body, as long as the body is there, we live in the world as we are supposed to live. But within yourself, that's why it's some traditions we say that it's a journey of within. You see it as Brahm. You see Brahm talking, Brahm listening, Brahm everywhere. Now, if there is no cause of something, then the Vastu cannot appear. How to understand this? If there is no father, there will be no child. And until there was a child, no one was there to call that man as a father. It is only after the birth of the child that that man becomes a parent or the mother becomes a parent. That's how, because of the birth of the child. If the sansar was not formed, if Maharaj was in Sona Samad, then who would have known the Brahm? Nobody would be there. The Brahm wouldn't be there to know itself. Same way, just how like if there was no child, who would know the parents? Who would call them as parents? They became parents after the child was born. Same way, one cannot clap with two hands. Oh, one can need two hands to clap, sorry, and not one. There needs to be two in order to understand the Brahm too, but it's actually Brahm understanding itself only. If there is only Brahm too, there would be no need for understanding as well. And if a man or a woman they don't procreate, then how will the child be formed? If they die without giving any birth to any child, then no further generations are formed. If the cause is destroyed, then how will any action happen? And now we see so many stars and meteoroids being destroyed as well. There has to be a cause behind this. Without any cause, an action or activity just cannot happen. That's why this sansar is there, but there has to be a cause as well. So Maharaj, let's take a pause here and do vichar of this as well after the class as well, and even later through the day, and do abhyas of this thoroughly so that this can be experienced as well. Rather than just reading about it, it can be put it into practical experience as well, because it's important, as Maharaj has explained. In the last class as well, we were doing vichar of a perception. So this answers that question as well, that the perception is nothing more than the intellect, the buddhi. That's why nobody is right or wrong, because everyone is only explaining through their own buddhi. That's why we take Gurmat. We take the Guru's buddhi. We don't use our buddhi here, because it's the to understand the Nirakar, or to become the Nirakar root, to become the Atam root, we need that Shuddh buddhi, who knows, and whose buddhi is going to help us? The Guru's buddhi, because the Guru's buddhi is without any doubt. Our buddhi has doubt in it. That's why that faith is important, that constant abhyas is important. So, Mare Kirpa, let's focus on that too, to do more abhyas of this. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ